let's get to the first Quiet Place film, which is A Quiet Place from 2018. It's directed by John Krasinski, stars him as well as Emily Blunt, Millicent Simmons, Noah Jupe. And the synopsis is: a family struggles for survival in a world invaded by a blind alien creature with ultra-sensitive hearing. I remember when this first came out and it was this huge blowout success. It was hyped up so much. And even though John Krasinski had done a fairly small indie film before this put him on the map as a director and writer too. When I saw it for the first time in theaters, it was a fantastic experience. I had the perfect audience just by luck. They weren't talking out of nervousness. Everyone was silent throughout the whole thing unless it really warranted kind of a vocal response. Of all the franchises out there, it's one of the most interesting and one that is able to thrive on being very simple and minimal. There's not a lot of fat to any of the three films. They're all around 90 minutes. There's not too many characters in any of them. You're always following either one person or a small group. There's not a lot of big action. There's some kind of chaotic chases and things like that, but it's not a lot of big explosions all the time. I'll never get over the opening scene. That cold, quiet opening where you meet the family. There's no real context for anything other than they're just trying to be ultra quiet. You see the young boy in the family take this spaceship, I think it is, this toy spaceship with batteries, and you're like, oh no, like what's he gonna do? Then they're walking along the pathway in the forest. The boy puts in the batteries, the spaceship turns on and makes a lot of noise, and John Krasinski races to try and save him because he knows an alien is coming. He doesn't get there quick enough, and the alien snatches him away, and it just cuts to black. Like, that was the perfect way to start this series. In terms of the overall setup with the family home out in the countryside, the idea of them laying out sand to make their footsteps more quiet, the incorporation of sign language, not only to, of course, be silent, but because of the daughter who is deaf. The direction overall is very strong. There are times where it's a little too obvious and simple with how it's trying to convey what's going on, like where it just pans across all these newspaper clippings and whiteboard drawings and calculations. You know, it is what it is. It's not a big deal, but it's at least showing you visually what's going on rather than a ton of exposition. So I do prefer that. When they explain things like the idea that they can make more noise when they're around other loud noises like the river, the waterfall, it helps that John Krasinski is explaining that to a child, so it sort of has to be simple. The old man out in the woods who you can just tell is just ready to give up, and he screams out. One thing about that scene and a couple others, John Krasinski's shushing of him putting his finger over his mouth is just so overdone. Like, it's pressing into his mouth and his nose. It's just, I don't know if that was intentional or not, but it's sort of goofy to look at once you notice it. When Emily Blunt goes into labor and she's in the bathtub and the alien is crawling right nearby, that's a really chilling, like, oh my God, is she gonna get taken away moment. As well as the nail sticking out of the floor. You know, it's like obvious and what's gonna happen, but when she actually steps on it, like, you can imagine what that would feel like and the amount of pain and how badly you want to scream out, but you can't, and she just has to hold it in. The strained relationship between Krasinski and the daughter, and him trying to fix the hearing aid and it never really working, at least until the very end. Then he eventually sacrifices himself for them, which is refreshing because a lot of movies in this vein would not have the guts to actually kill off a main character. The reveal of what the aliens look like, not necessarily the skin or the overall physique of them, because that's fairly standard, but the inner workings of the super evolved ear with all the different levels and mechanisms and sensors, I thought that looked awesome. It is produced by Michael Bay. Usually when he produces something, I get a lot of Michael Bay vibes. I didn't really get that in this one for whatever reason, which I think is a good thing. The score is by Marco Beltrami, who I actually interviewed on the Music Buds podcast a couple years ago. Very good score. Heavy 4.5 out of 5. All right, let's get to A Quiet Place Part 2, which came out in 2020. It is once again directed by John Krasinski. Stars the same family cast, as well as Cillian Murphy, Digimon Hanzo, Scoot McNairy, and the synopsis is: following the events at home, the Abbott family now face the terrors of the outside world. Considering how big the first one was, there was a lot of hype for this one. I was very excited. And I think it is still I've seen it a couple of times. It's still a very solid film. It is slightly lesser than the first one, mainly because, like many first films in a franchise, it's the origin, it's fresh. And so this one is already living in that world where the level of mystery and suspense is not totally gone, but it's diminished naturally. But like the first one, it also has a killer opening sequence where you see the family living on day one of the attack. They're just having a normal day. I think the son is playing a baseball game, Little League game. You meet Cillian Murphy's character in passing, and then suddenly these aliens are in the world. For one, that long take with Emily Blunt in the car and the bus driving after her, amazing. And you are just waiting for things to happen because something bad is about to happen if you've seen the first one. And one more thing that I didn't mention in the first review, I know I talked about the design of the ear of the aliens, but the sound design of them moving around and all the clicks and all that is really, really effective, and it's even better in this film. We meet back up with the family, minus John Krasinski, of course, and so it's just Emily Blunt, the two kids, and the newborn baby. The sequence when they're in I guess it's like a factory yard or a junkyard, and they hit the line of cans, and they don't know if that was intentional at the time or not. They hear the aliens coming for them, and they find that Cillian Murphy's character is still alive, and he helps them, which, what a actor Cillian Murphy is. Amazing. One of my favorites of all time. His safety chamber that he sleeps in, as well as his wariness to have this newborn, very loud baby that could possibly compromise his safety. It's also a nice moment when they're able to hear music for the first time in God knows how long. The daughter has a lot of time in this movie, which I think the actress is great and her character is very well written. The sequence of her going out on her own to kind of prove herself and to say that she's okay, and then she ends up getting in a lot of trouble. And on top of that, going from you hearing everything and then it cutting back to complete silence with how she hears it most of the time when her hearing aid isn't working properly. The cutting back or parallel stories going at once with Cillian Murphy going out on his own, encountering that group that pretty much tries to screw him over, and then he's able to get the one up on them, and not only are they killed, but he discovers that the aliens aren't good in water, or they're scared of water. And while that's happening, Emily Blunt and the family are dealing with the alien finding their home, or Cillian Murphy's home. It's to be expected, I think, that they would come across a quote unquote sanctuary or some other kind of protected village where people are living fairly comfortably and they think they're okay. But then the moment that Emily Blunt and Cillian Murphy show up, everything gets screwed up and they have to leave and the whole village is destroyed. And that eventual attack by the aliens on the village is great. There's a lot of interesting little set pieces and moments that make it feel chaotic but controlled, and you're never losing focus and you're always worried as to who might go next. Heavy 4 out of 5. All right, let's get to the third and most recent to date film in the Quiet Place series, which is A Quiet Place Day One. Came out in 2024, is directed by Michael Sarnowski, who also directed the film Pig with Nicolas Cage. Great movie. It is co-written by Krasinski, though. Stars a totally new cast. Lupita Nyong'o, Joseph Quinn, Alex Wolff. Digimon Hanzo is in there, though, briefly. And the synopsis is, a young woman named Sam finds herself trapped in New York City during the early stages of an invasion by alien creatures with ultra-sensitive hearing. This was the only one of the three that I didn't see in theaters. I only saw it a couple of months ago. Had heard fairly good things. Some people were kind of mixed on it and meh on it. Lupita Nyong'o, loved her since I saw her in 12 Years a Slave. She's fantastic across the board, and it's cool to see her in a big film like this in a leading role. The opening setup where she's this young woman who's very sick in this medical facility, and they're just desperately wanting to get out into the city to have a day out from their very mundane lives there. And of course, they have to choose the day when there's an alien invasion. And the orchestration of that initial attack, which is, I think, calling back to 9/11, of it being in New York City, all these different shop owners and taxi drivers, they suddenly realize something crazy is happening. And of course, all of the smoke and debris coming down from the buildings and covering everyone in ash. It's mainly about Lupita Nyong'o and Joseph Quinn and their unexpected relationship and trying to survive together. I would say that this is my favorite visually of the three. Very dark and dreary cinematography, but the shadows, the rain, the smoke, it all looks really visually beautiful. Having an animal like a pet in a film like this it sometimes could be manipulative, depending on the story that it's telling, but I like that Lupita Nyong'o had this cat that you're always scared that the cat was going to get taken away. And you got to think, in most cases, a dog would more than likely be in a lot more danger of being discovered by the aliens, since cats are usually more quiet. The dynamic of Lupita Nyong'o being more so the one leading the charge, and Joseph Quinn being the much more afraid, nervous one. The aliens crawling all over the buildings, chasing after the crowd of people, and Nyong'o hiding under one of the cars and for a moment getting trapped. The sewer sequence, I think it's a sewer, when they're crawling through the deep water and the aliens are crawling all around, and it's so hard to tell where they are because it's so dark. And the final climax of them trying to get on the boat, that's effective. It is a little predictable that someone is going to hit a car and it's going to set off all the alarms, so aliens are going to swarm them, but not a huge problem. One idea that they explore in this one, and not so much in the first two, is coming to terms with dying, because, at the end, Lupita Nyong'o sacrifices herself, much like John Krasinski did, but for one, she knows she has a terminal illness, so she gets Joseph Quinn and the cat to safety, and then having her final moment of peace with her music out in the street before the alien comes and grabs her, as well as people making sure that they enjoy the little things in life, just playing a game of cards or spending time with someone, listening to a song, light 4 out of 5. All right, well, let's get to the bonus review for this show, which is Bird Box, the Netflix film. Like the first Quiet Place, came out in 2018, just was the year for apocalypse, alien invasion movies, I guess. It's directed by Suzanne Bier, stars Sandra Bullock, Trevante Rhodes, John Malkovich, Sarah Paulson, Rosa Salazar, Jackie Weaver. Machine Gun Kelly pops up in there briefly. And the synopsis is, 5 years after an ominous, unseen presence drives most of society to suicide, a mother and her 2 children make a desperate bid to reach safety. The internet sensation of the Bird Box challenge when this was released was so stupid. I still can't believe people did that, where they would blindfold themselves and just walk into traffic and other things and see if they could make it out. Like, just completely moronic behavior. And it also was a perfect example of how an internet fad comes and goes, because it went on for maybe a week or 2, and then the next day it was like, oh man, that was so 12 hours ago, and it just vanished. And I think for that reason, I just didn't watch it at the time. It just seemed like I'm not gonna participate in that. And so I only got around to watching it for the first time about a year ago. And the comparisons to A Quiet Place are a little too hard to ignore. And I think in almost every aspect, A Quiet Place surpasses Bird Box. But similar to A Quiet Place, it also has a very good setup. You meet Sandra Bullock, who is very good. And this was a bit of a renaissance for her. She and Sarah Paulson, another great actor, they go out driving, and then suddenly chaos ensues. Sarah Paulson spots something off screen and suddenly kills herself, and so do many others. And one thing right off the bat that I like is you never see anything. You're only seeing shadows, you're only hearing sounds, and that's a good way to not only keep the budget down, but also keep, if done well, keep the mystery there as to, okay, are these aliens? Is it some supernatural force moving around? When they get to the house of John Malkovich, that group is interesting. I do think they spend a little too much time there to where I just want to go out and explore the world. The frequent intercutting of the main storyline with the sequence on the boat with Sandra Bullock and the kids, and you not really knowing what's going on, where are they going, why are they acting that way, considering how A Quiet Place is primarily about the loss of being able to be loud or produce sound. This is, you're having to forfeit your sight, which is equally scary, because you're having to either put a blindfold on yourself, you're just having to look at the ground, hoping nothing comes into your view, because otherwise you're screwed. The friendship, the kind of romance between Sandra Bullock and Trevante Rhodes, who's, I think he's a former soldier, so you have that kind of safety for her. The third act was probably my favorite part, and there's that eventual discovery of this safe house where all the people that are alive there are blind people. And you're like, wow, yeah, that would help in this situation. It was based off a book, which I think would be a very interesting read, but that's about the extent of my interest in this world. 3.5 out of 5.